is America's most watched news.
On your side, this is WHAS 11 News.
Breaking news right now on 11 at 11. We're on the scene in Bullitt County where authorities say Kentucky lawmaker Dan Johnson has taken his own life. Johnson earlier tonight posting a note on his Facebook page saying, "Heaven is my home." And just yesterday denying allegations of sexually abusing a teenager.
Where were all these things at before I was in office?
We have reaction to Johnson's suicide pouring in from the governor to other lawmakers. Our political editor, Chris Williams, will join us with coverage of that reaction. But first, we do begin with this breaking story. It is a story that is already making national headlines tonight. Authorities in Bullitt County say Kentucky lawmaker Dan Johnson killed himself earlier this evening after posting that apparent suicide note on his own Facebook page. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Proffitt. The Bullitt County Sheriff Donnie Tinnell tells us Johnson drove over the Greenwell Ford Bridge in Mount Washington in an area called the River Bottoms before shooting himself. We have team coverage. Reaction to his death is pouring in from lawmakers and the governor, and our political editor is here with what they're saying. Also, first we want to go to 11 at 11's Heather Fontaine. She's been at the scene all night. She joins us live from outside the Bullitt County Sheriff's Department with details on what happened. Heather?
That's right, Doug. The Bullitt County Sheriff's Department, they're the ones that are investigating tonight. Officials do believe that Representative Dan Johnson has taken his own life. Now, the Sheriff's Department told me that he drove his SUV to Greenwell Ford Bridge. He pulled over, he got out of his car, and then he shot himself with a handgun. The coroner, David Billings, said he died of a single gunshot wound to the head. Again, it does appear to be a suicide, but they are still going to investigate. This comes one day after he spoke out denying sexual accusations of molesting a woman when she was 17 years old. Now, officials are not giving us a time frame, but it appears that Johnson posted to Facebook sometime between 5 and 6 o'clock tonight an apparent suicide note. He said, 9/11/2001, PTSD 24/7. 16 years is a sickness that will take my life. I cannot handle it any longer. It has won this life, but heaven is my home. It then goes on to say, P.S. I love my friends. You are family. God loves all people, no matter what. A deputy with the Bullitt County Sheriff's Department talked to us while we were at the scene.
Anytime anything like this happens is a tragedy, and you know, it's just something we deal with in law enforcement, and it never gets any easier.
Dan Johnson, just 57 years old. He lived here in Bullitt County. His home wasn't far from where that scene was, where he apparently ended his own life. And what does really make this tough is that Bullitt County is a pretty small-knit community where nearly everybody knows everybody, especially since Dan Johnson was a public figure. So just very tough on a lot of people here tonight, Doug.
Heather, back to the Facebook post. We believe it was posted sometime between 5 and 6. It generated a lot of attention. There was a lot of talk. People were wondering what was going on, and a search began for Dan Johnson. How did authorities locate him?
That's right, Doug. There were hundreds and hundreds of comments. Last I checked, over 180 comments on that Facebook post. And police tell us that someone actually saw the Facebook post, contacted the authorities. They were actually able to ping his phone. It brought them to a general location, and that's where they found him near his vehicle tonight.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Outside the Sheriff's Department, we're going to have another report from Heather, more reaction coming up in 10 minutes, and reaction from viewers coming into our station here tonight. Dan Johnson had been in the news before all of this. His journey to Frankfurt made headlines around the world just last fall. The controversy and narrow victory kept him mostly isolated during his freshman year at the Capitol in Frankfurt. Tonight, allies and some who had been critical of him are reacting to his death. WHAS 11's political editor Chris Williams joins us now with that part of the story tonight. Chris?
Doug, some people don't know that Dan Johnson was not even the original Republican chosen to vie for the 49th District House seat last year. He was placed on the ballot after a paperwork snafu with another candidate. When Facebook posts surfaced shortly before the general election, pictures that some considered racist, he defended himself and stayed in the contest despite calls by his own party to exit. He went on to win that contest by 156 votes.
People are being judged by accusation, totally judged by accusation. They're not just being judged, but they're being condemned by accusation.
At the news conference Tuesday, just more than 24 hours before his death, the preacher-turned-politician stood tall against the allegations. As word spread of his apparent suicide, lawmakers began to react. Governor Matt Bevin's tweet included, quote, "My heart breaks for his family tonight." Former Speaker Jeff Hoover, who's been at the center of a sexual harassment scandal recently, tweeted that Dan Johnson had reached out to him, encouraged and prayed for him, quote, over the past few weeks in some of the darkest days of my life. His second tweet called out those on social media posting accusations. Via phone, I spoke with 81st District Republican Representative Wesley Morgan, who said he spoke with Dan Johnson hours earlier and had no idea what was about to happen. On Tuesday, House leadership had called for Representative Johnson to resign amid the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting expose. Tonight, Speaker Pro Tem David Osborne announced Johnson's death, asking, quote, please keep his family in your prayers during this incredibly difficult time. Louisville Public Media released a statement reading in part that their aim, as always, is to provide the public with fact-based, unbiased reporting and hold public officials accountable for their actions. It also explained that they had reached out to Dan Johnson for comment numerous times during their months-long investigation. Johnson took aim at the media during his final news conference.
You know, those people that run for office, hopefully, are just real people, and there's no perfect people. So there's going to be things, if you go through the time somebody was born, and that's what's happened in my life in this situation till this date, you know, there's things that aren't perfect, and that's a fact. This allegation concerning this lady, this young girl, absolutely has no merit.
The comments that were made in the investigative report that came out weren't just about the molestation. There were allegations that he was involved in an arson back in the 1980s in which he paid someone to burn his car for insurance fraud. There were allegations, and there had been allegations, questions of whether he burned down his church years ago in another insurance case. And there had been this belief that he had brought a woman back from the dead and cured a man who was deaf. A lot of those allegations were coming back, and questions were being raised about that in this investigative report. You can see the full news conference from yesterday on our website right now.
In that coverage yesterday, you made an observation of who was also in the crowd watching this yesterday. You noticed, and what did you discover?
I knew there were two men standing behind the cameras back a ways, and I saw one man had a pad out and a recording device. Neither one of them looked like any of the Frankfurt Press Corps that I'm familiar with or anyone I knew in media in town. So as soon as Dan Johnson was done speaking, they headed out right away. I ran out a side door to try to kind of get a beeline to them, find out who they were. They confirmed for me that they were LMPD officers, but they wouldn't say why they were there, whether they were following up on the case that had been the alleged allegations that had been filed years before, or if they were just paying attention to what was happening. But it was obvious that LMPD was paying attention yesterday as well.
All right, I know you're heading to Frankfurt tomorrow to continue our coverage.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. And we do have another breaking story that has developed here tonight.